Ah, a Newton's Cradle, a lovely executive toy for the desk. Invented 30 or 40 years ago and still available in all sorts of sizes and shapes, but it's using ball bearings, in this case suspended on little fine nylon strings. And all these toys here are basically ball bearings, but some of them showing interesting physical principles, but also a lot of fun as well. It's interesting to see the typical sizes of balls used of this big portfolio. We've got the biggest one which we use is a 2-inch ball bearing. That's a 1-inch, that's a 1/2 inch, and that's a 1/4 inch. But of course there's about a factor of 8 between these two, almost a tenth. This is 8 times heavier, 8 times more volume than this one, and then an eighth and an eighth. So it goes up very, very rapidly in weight and in volume and the amount of metal that's in them. The biggest one is something that we've had for some time now. It's a way of demonstrating how the energy of motion can be turned into the energy of heat. Just by putting a piece of thin paper in between and banging them hard, the energy of motion, woof, and then strong smell of carbon of burning, because it creates heat as it hits the piece. With small ball bearings it wouldn't work. You need really heavy mass, and then you get this marvellous conversion into heat. One of the first ones I came across in this genre is this one here called Rush Hour, which is a whole lot of ball bearings. It's very small ones, about 1/4 inch or less, in a sort of ramp, a series of ramps in a box. And when you set it going, you get this marvellous motion of people dashing back and forward, and they give it the name Rush Hour. That's very, very descriptive, isn't it? Everyone rushing up and down escalators at tube stations to get to work. Makes a nice noise too. As you can see, it's getting quite scarred from all its uses. I've had that for 40 years, that one there. Also at this time I've picked up a very curious little thing here which is fairly harmless. It's just a piece of wood but with a ramp in it and ball bearings in it. And when you turn it upside down, they go down the zigzag. Make a pleasing sound, a bit like a rain stick actually. Put it on the table for volume. Ah, much louder, very nice, but that's about all it does. Make it go a bit slower by putting it at an angle, but that's fairly limited. And also, this is about the 1970s I picked up these things. This curious little thing here is a ring magnet and a heavy ball bearing, about 1 inch or a bit more. And the idea is simply to put it on the equator there and turn it round in the hand and do an action like that. It's quite therapeutic. It's a nice feel for the hand. I expect the magnetic force does good things for your circulation and all that stuff, but I don't know about that. But it's a nice item to sort of fiddle with. And also at the same time I bought another one which is a bit more mysterious. It's just 2 balls on a spring, and you can wrap it around your hat finger and you can pull it and push it not too much and make it go whap, whap, whap like those clacker things, and so on. It's fairly harmless and appeared sometime in the mid-1970s, but nice. 1990s I came across this very nice little device which they have in China, which is healthy balls, in which you've got, they're not fully ball bearings, they could be heavy ball bearings, but they make it a little bit more customer friendly by making them hollowed out and having little noises inside. And the idea is to turn them round and round, and it's good therapeutic exercise for your hands. Then there's a number of puzzles produced typically by my friend James Algetti's company Pentangle over the years, and there's so many items out there which are ball bearings in little boxes like this, which are skill toys. The idea in this one is to try and get the ball bearings which are in the bottle there, as it were, as if they're supposed to be liquid, and you've got to get them into the glass below without spilling a drop. And of course, it's very difficult to do that. I'm not sure I'm going to get even one of them going. You need to do it at a very shallow angle. I haven't got a single one on the glass. Oh yes, I've got a few, but I've shaken them in. But the idea is to tilt it and get all the ball bearings going from the bottle into the glass. Very tricksy. Also, at the same time, this Pentangle company produced this little man, the Sick Man. Nice little blurb on the back. And the ball bearing in this case is being kept here in his tummy. And we lift out the little plug to release it. There's the ball bearing. And the idea is, it's a maze, a tricky one too. You have to put it in the mouth. You probably never see it again, but what you're supposed to do is get it through the maze, which is all over the interior of this, and get it out through his ear, and perhaps that will cure him of his ills. I don't know if I've ever cured mine, but that's the idea of it. So it's a little maze puzzle. But a very curious use of something which is not a dexterity toy. This, I think, was just a prototype. I don't think it was ever produced, but the idea is to use it as a dice. It's got 2 ball bearings, it's got 2 races where they can go in. What look like cards are actually values of a dice from 1 to 6. The idea is to give it a good shake and then pause and see where the magnets which are lying underneath each of the cards have come to. So there I've got a 2 and a 5. Another shake, and you've got another version of it, another. Take it off there and you can see it more clearly. The idea is to have one ball bearing inside and one outside, and there's magnets under each of these little cards here to give you a value. That was, I don't think it was ever produced, but this was a prototype which I received back in the 1970s as an idea for a ball bearing. The Gaussian gun, which has been very popular over the years, involves 3 ball bearings and 2 very strong neodymium magnets. And when you push this down, it whaps, sends it off. In the original version of this, though, it was actually done on a circle. And the idea was you set the thing going, and the first ball bearing went round and hit the little bunch again the second time. And of course, it's a bit of a much slower impact. But the idea is it did 2 circuits round. You could do that with this device. Just put around a heavy bit of material, which is in the form of a ring around it. But the most spectacular is obviously this initial one, when you just have the piece coming down, and this comes off at a tremendous angle, at a tremendous speed, and it's called a Gaussian gun. Another one with prototypes which were slightly different to the original was this one here, which is the hurricane balls, where 2 ball bearings are welded together. They don't need to be, actually. I've tried one with the 2 ball bearings and a little neodymium magnet in between. But the idea was this, is to speed it up, blow on it, and you shine various lights in it and you get some beautiful light effects. But here's an early prototype which never caught on. It was ball bearings, it had to be done on the flat side. It had to be spun like this. Very curious. Because the central ball looks as though it's completely stationary, and it's actually rotating very rapidly, and the other balls appear to hold little rings. Very strange. The chap who made this for me, a physicist from Germany, made another version with a large and a small ball, which was, again, interesting, but never quite catch on. Now here's a very nice toy. It's Planet Balls, comes from Victorian times, 2 ball bearings with attachments to them. I think they're taken from Newton's cradle. Elastic band in between, and they unwind, and then with a bit of luck they wind back the other way. And on a good smooth surface you can get 4 or 5 reversals with this thing. 2 ball bearings which make a planetary system. 2 ball bearings back and forward. Much more sophisticated is the Atomics, which has appeared about, again, in the mid-70s, which is tiny ball bearings, very, very well contained in a piece of plastic which had to be made to very high tolerances. You've got to have very, very precise size of cell inside, near to the nearest thousandth of an inch. And the effect is that it shows, for crystallography students, what happens at atomic level. You're getting voids and fault lines appearing. But an interesting thing, which is a side effect, which is not intentional, is that because the ball bearings are so small, and this is plastic, it's creating static electricity at the top here. So the top, as it were, is boiling off. I don't think that occurs at atomic level, but it's a wonderful demonstrating to students of crystallography what's happening actually down at atomic level with the voids, the little round blank bits, and the fault lines. Another useful ball bearings, which is a very subtle bit of physics, is a heavy ball bearing here is in the base of this wand, which has got sand, and when you turn it upside down, the ball bearing sits at the top, and you turn it upside down, you think, well, it's going to stay down there, whatever else you do, because it's so much heavier than the sand. It's not so. When you shake this, a lot of times, the ball bearing will slowly climb its way up to the top of the sand and appear at the top, which is a very subtle bit of physics that Martin Gardner wrote about and made up quite a very interesting piece of correspondence. And then we've got a beautiful item here called an ocean drum, which I think is one of my favourites. It's got thousands of ball bearings inside, big drum skin, ocean drum, and it makes the most wonderful sound of the ocean. Yes, it's just like the surf coming up on a sandy beach. Wonderful stuff. So ball bearings are used for an astonishing variety of toys and effects. Many of them are very interesting physical principles as well, but there seems to be no end to the amount of ideas that are coming out using the ball bearing. Can you think of some?